great.
this. We're about to
You
start.
know, it's remarkable. It's truly remarkable. Look at this.
Hold on
shit.
1 second.
No
Welcome
cursing.
everybody. Wait, hold
No
on,
cursing.
Flea. Not
No
yet.
cursing.
No cursing, but also hold on 1 second.
That's my last one.
Welcome everybody to Late Night Happy Hour here on ESPN Los Angeles. Brian Kamenetzky, Andy Kamenetzky, and as you can see in the middle of your screen, great Lakers fan, also a pretty good musician, Flea, kind enough to join us on a Friday night. Hey man, how are you?
Very well, thank you. I'm luxuriating in the wondrous high above San Bernardino at Lake Arrowhead in my wife's cousin's house. And, you know, living a good life.
Can we talk about the ceiling that's behind you? The architecture of this place is spectacular.
Yeah, well, this particular house actually has housed Rock Hudson, Marilyn Monroe, Tab Hunter, Van Johnson, various other movie stars of yesteryear have enjoyed here. My wife's running away over there. And this is the city. This is like the sunroom. It's all glass.
Oh, so you know it's old because like this is like a solarium type room.
Yeah, like a solarium room.
Because that was like a thing back in the day.
Yeah, it's a thing. It's but you know right now we're experiencing high temperatures in Southern California, and it was particularly hot in this room today. I was about to boil it out.
You can't spell solarium without soul. So I mean, which is very sunny. We also Andy and I feel really bad. The last time we spoke to you was before the season, right before your book came out.
About it. No, I'm kidding.
And we were talking every time we can't do this again next year because apparently we're bad luck. But it was right before, and you took time out before you were getting married.
You were getting married like 48 hours later.
Right, yeah.
And we were like, "Are you sure this is okay?"
Right. And now we call you and you're on vacation. And we feel like we're imposing.
We're intruding a lot, honestly.
No, I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't want to. And,
okay, well, good.
I like speaking with you guys. And, I got married. I'm going on vacation and carrying forth. It's, you know, the world has changed pretty drastically since then. I don't know if you guys have heard about this coronavirus thing.
I've been very focused on work. I haven't actually noticed.
I just found out myself.
How are we doing with it?
If I'm honest, I could be dishonest, but if I'm honest, I kind of love it. You know, I love quarantine. I'm built for quarantine, man. I can sit at home and play my bass and, you know, go swimming and stuff and shoot the basketball. I got a little half court. I'm happy.
Now, have you always been like this? Because I think most people would assume between like the decades spent as a rock star and your general level of energy that you would really struggle in a quarantine.
No, I mean, in general, I treasure my solitude anyways. I really like it. I mean, I'm a musician and kind of most of the things that I really love to do are done very well alone. I mean, I enjoy community as well, but it's, you know, my only like for me, having everything kind of get really simple and not being pulled in a million directions and, gigs got canceled and that's a drag and stuff, but having a time to just write music and not go anywhere. And if I do go anywhere, there's no traffic, like all the, I really enjoy it. The only thing that I really don't like about quarantine and COVID is, I know that it's selfish for me because I can afford to sit still for, a period of time and not have to worry about eating and stuff. And so I really worry about my fellow human beings who don't have that luxury. So, been doing my best. My family, my daughter, my wife, and I, we all, been putting in a lot of work, like in LA, helping people, trying to supply food where it's needed, and building bridges in different communities and stuff, and that's been really good.
Yeah, you are obviously someone of this city, like and you've been you've spent so much of your life here, like, what is it like to see LA in this way? Like, where there is no traffic when you go out, and the places that you would go aren't open. Like, it's very strange for me, and I've only been here, 20 years.
Yeah, no, it's very strange, especially, I drive around Los Angeles. I have memories everywhere. I've been through something weird in every part of the city, and to see it change in the way that it has over these last months is weird and surreal at times. But the part of it that makes me really happy is, the lack of pollution from the cars and the planes, being minimized. And also, in general, like with all the activism going on, the social activism and Black Lives Matter, and like the civil rights discussion and activism being reignited as profoundly as it has, that doesn't happen without coronavirus. That wouldn't have happened. Like people have been forced to say hi. People have been,
He says hi. He says hi.
Hi, how you doing?
My daughter, actually, by the way, Flea, she just heard your guys' version of the Red Hot because she knows the Robert Johnson original.
Really?
When she was little, she heard me playing it once, and she called it the tamale song, like just because they were singing about tamales, and she recognized that. Yeah, we got them for sale. And I told her that we were going to be interviewing you, and that your band did a version of it. And first of all, she thought that it was funny that you guys were also a food name and that you did this song about a food. But then I played your version of it, and her reaction was, "That's really fast."
Yeah,
that's really fast.
I still remember when we recorded that. I really don't want to. I want to go back to what we were talking about before, but I'll remember where we were.
Sorry,
but no, it's great, and I'm really impressed that she knows Robert Johnson. That's awesome. That's some good parenting.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, I remember we recorded that because we recorded that whole album at this house on Laurel Canyon, this old house that we thought we were sure was haunted, and we're all living there in this house. And I'd never been in a house that big before. It was this big old Hollywood mansion up in Laurel Canyon. And we've been recording, and when we did that song, we decided let's try to set up outside, and we hiked up this hill behind the house and set up all the microphones and stuff, and ran wires to the house, and got up there, and Chad was playing drums with his hands, and we had little amps and a generator, and we're out there, and we played it outside, and it was like 2:00 in the morning or something outdoors in Hollywood, and you can kind of hear cars going by down Laurel Canyon in the background a little bit. And I just remember feeling so good. It's one of those, recording can be really magical, but it can also be a really arduous process. And that particular song, it's one of that super happy memory. Yeah. But what I was talking about before your beautiful daughter came on, was of course, was that with all this activism going on, which really makes me happy. Like, I love that. I think it's potential for a lot of change, and I really hope that the momentum can keep going and there can be more justice and, equality. But I don't think that happens without everyone not being distracted by a bunch of other stuff and sitting home. I imagine, had George Floyd been murdered, last year at this time, it would have been terrible. It would have been an outcry. It would have been awful. But then it would be like, oh, what's on the play? You know what I mean? Oh, this is awful. Oh, what's the playoffs doing? Or whatever doing. I'm going to work now.
I was about to say, something as simple as I have to go to work. Yeah.
Yeah, people have to go to work. People more than even just work, people don't have to sit with their thoughts. And sit with their thoughts and listen to other people and have those moments of reflection and be like, this has got to change. And then really pay attention to, this massive evidence, It's like someone brought up to me a little while ago, I think it was you, Mook, it's my wife sitting over there, that when they said that smoking was bad for you. First it was it might be bad for you, whatever. They say it might cause cancer, but you know what I mean? And then there's become this preponderance of evidence that's so massive and so undeniable. And I think that's, happening with civil rights movement, Black Lives Matter movement, right? It's just like the evidence is so public now and so known, and there's so much of it. There's no denying the radical injustice, and that it's got to change, and that we can do better, and that we can all work together and do better. And so I feel like it's, this is a really positive thing. I look at it with a great deal of optimism.
Flea, there was a moment, like, and I think what helps too is it's easier to explain. Like, there's certain things about this that, as horrifying as it is, that are easier to communicate. Like, we did the night, it was a week or so after George Floyd was killed, where everybody in LA, you sat outside and you with your flashlight or whatever you had, and you did that for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, and in silence. And I brought my two boys outside, and we sat and we looked around the neighborhood, and we saw other people doing it. And the length of time to sit, and when you're 10 years old and 8 years old, he was 7 at the time, to sit in silence for 8 minutes and 40. And we talked before about why that we were sitting for that long. And they understood it. They understood it in a way that I don't think they could have in, explaining Trayvon Martin or explaining other things or other people who have been the victims of police violence or other kinds of violence, any of that. And so many of these things came together in a way that made it impossible to ignore. And I do think you're right that COVID was a big part of it.
It definitely was. What also, Flea, brings me a lot of encouragement is that we've seen how many people don't want to ignore it. Like we have collectively as a nation a really short attention span. Like we are distracted exceptionally easy, and I'm not trying to be pious about this. I'm easily distractible myself. But the focus that we've had as a country and really the world on these injustices and these social inequities and police brutality and these issues that have been there for a long time, decades upon decades, the fact that we as a nation didn't want to look away, I think really says something. I mean, and for a lot of different reasons, I think George Floyd was just this tipping point to where people have just felt this onus to not look away and to want to be part of changing this.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that it's important for everybody to really stay focused on it and not forget, and to stay focused. I remember, growing up, I had friends, Israeli friends, and my friend's dad, when I was a kid, had been in a prison camp at Auschwitz. And he had the numbers tattooed on his arm and stuff. And I just remember them saying never forget, never let this be brushed under the rug of history. This is important. And that's how I feel about the Black Lives Matter movement now. We can't forget. We have to stay focused. We have to stand up for humanity. We have to stand up what's right, and history will remember.
Yeah, I remember for a piece that we were working on for The Athletic, we were talking with you about O.J. Simpson and the Bronco chase anniversary, and that came pretty within a year or so on the heels of the Rodney King verdict and the riots that followed from there. And I don't know if you were in LA when the riots happened. I was, because I was at USC, and the difference in just the vibe in terms of, I think, the way people around the city, just speaking for LA, those riots felt a lot more segregated and dangerous. And, there was much more racial animosity and tension coming through, like black versus white, black versus the Korean community in South Central. And you couldn't help but just notice the difference. And obviously we know the connection between the Rodney King verdict and OJ. And, we've seen how those things ended up for a lot of people connected. But, the issue of police violence and, social inequities, racial inequities, and the way the justice system works, doesn't work. But the difference just in the way I think people saw the issues then, just purely on racial and background, is so much different 20-something years ago versus now, again, in a way that brings me a lot of hope.
Yeah, me too. It feels like evolution, and it feels like we stand a much better chance of unity. And I think like um, people know from all walks of life, all ethnicities, that what everything that's done before hasn't worked. And lashing out in anger is one thing, and can be understandable. But like having unity and coming together to stand up for equality and to point out injustice where it is, um, that's something we got to do.
Yeah,
you
I
know,
want to. Yeah, I want to ask you one more thing too. I mean, because we also want to get into some of the Lakers stuff too, obviously. But you are a person, you write and you play music, and if it seems like artistic people often internalize things and internalize moments. What is when there is so much happening? You talked about like being alone and writing music and things like that. When there is so much, when there's COVID and there's social protests, how does that influence the process? Is it harder? Is it easier? What is it like for you?
well, for me, playing music and like my artistic life, writing, playing, it's just time. Like when I have time to do it, I do it, and I'm happy about it. It's a sanctuary for me. It's a place where I'm like always working on my personal evolution as a human being, and using that as a vehicle to evolve. Um, and everything going on in the world. Like I said before, I'm inspired. I'm inspired by love. I'm inspired by people caring. I'm inspired by, like the community work I've been doing with my family, and I'm inspired by making connections with people who really care about justice, and who are willing to sacrifice and willing to give their time to try to make the world a better place. So I, I feel inspired. I feel excited, and my band's doing real good. When COVID hit, we had been working and writing to make a new record, and we stopped for a little while because we quarantined alone. Especially in the beginning, there was sort of a panic. You know what I mean? It was like,
Yes,
whoa,
for sure.
what's going on? And then time went by. I'm like, okay, we're cool. We're just the four of us get in the room, no crew. We'll be careful. We've all getting tested and all that stuff. And it's just been great. Like and maybe in a good way. Like we were supposed to do a bunch of gigs this summer, supposed to be on tour in Europe, and though like I would have liked to go out and make the cash, and I would like to go out and play the concerts and rock the world. It's been like we're sitting at home and we're writing and we're putting songs together, and it feels good. And so I don't know, everything's working. It's kind of just, it seems like a perfect storm in a lot of ways. I always see people always talking about, cancel 2020. This is the worst year ever. And like, there's a lot of tragic, sad things, death and injustice and murder and terrible things, but also, change is afoot. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it often takes incredibly uncomfortable, unpleasant things and events to spark change. I mean, if really, really bad things often, I think, take a really bad incident, like something like George Floyd or Breonna Taylor, or just this piling upon, incidents to eventually become that breaking point. And it's an unfortunate part of our history in terms of things that have actually changed. But, we have seen, it's frustrating that change often is incremental, because there are people who, frankly, don't have the luxury of patience in terms of waiting for that change. But you have to at least take, I guess, some degree of comfort or hope or something from the evidence of it incrementally happening, and hopefully that's what we're seeing now.
Yeah,
it'd be nice. It'd be very nice.
But if everyone can try to stay focused on justice and live a life that promotes justice, that it'll go faster. Yeah.
Well, by the way, too, because your daughter is grown, correct? She's
well, I have a 31-year-old daughter who's the grown one, and I have a 14-year-old one as well.
Okay, well, 14 though is still about half grown.
I don't have little kids anymore.
Right. Because this is proving a theory that Brian and I have talked about all through quarantine. Because Brian and I, we're writers. We like to think of ourselves as creative people. But the people who can truly be creative in the quarantine are the ones that have children who are either grown or grown enough. Because I know during this period, I've felt incredibly uncreative. Like, just because I don't have time to do anything. Like, I don't have time to think or concentrate. I've been teaching. I've been doing a bad job teaching third grade. Like that's been my job.
Yeah,
I'm terrible at it.
You know, my daughter is like closes the door, the computer's on for the homeschool, and if I go in there, you know, I might be bludgeoned over the head with a ball peen hammer.
Well, yeah, none of us want that. She does
not want me showing my face on her 8th grade computer screen.
No. Oh, 8th grade. They're at an age now where you're
well
embarrassed.
Past it when it's not cool when Dad wanders through the frame. That's not cool.
No, not even a little bit.
What's the how badly have you been jonesing for basketball? Well, you know, we're getting close to getting that back.
You know, I miss it. It's so weird. Like, since all this stuff has happened, it just seems like a different world, you know?
Does it?
Yeah, it seems so far away now when we were all at games together. Even like, you know, when I watch movies and people are like hugging and shaking hands, I'm like, whoa, remember when they do that? You know? But I really miss it. And I'm so excited to see and excited too, because we're going to watch basketball unlike we've ever seen before. No audience. Everyone in a like a tournament style. I mean, the playoff tournament anyway. But what they're going to have like 3 gyms going? Is that what they're going to have?
Yeah, it's like it's basically like AAU ball. And what I'm excited about is being able to hear it. Like, you know, the crowds are exciting, and I wouldn't want it to be like this all the time. But to actually be able to hear what these guys are saying, and you know, of course, I'm old enough I can handle the cursing. But how they communicate, the defensive calls, like what the trash talk, like what they're saying. Because they're going to forget we're listening, I think. And so I'm excited about that.
Yeah, for sure. No, they're just going to get into it. I mean, it's going to be strange for them at first. I bet it's going to take them a little while to adjust to the weird no crowd thing. But, you know, when I was watching soccer the other day and I went to watch my team, Sheffield United, and it was... They gave you a choice when you get the live stream to either have a crowd noise or no crowd noise. Like, they pipe in a crowd noise because it's just unsettling to people to watch it with no crowd noise. But no, I want to hear the squeaky shoes and the trash talking and the curse words. I want it. And also, you know, the things about basketball, like, for me, it's like fine art, you know, but beyond that, like, one of the things that I really love about it, and I think that made me fall in love with it more than other sports, is how much you get to see and feel of the players when they're on playing. It's like, you know, these guys out there in their underwear, you know what I mean? They're not hiding anything. And I love that about them. And you kind of like, you know, you fall in love with these guys, you know, because you really get to feel their personalities and what they're like and how they function in a team setting kind of shows so much of their heart, you know, and it's one of the things that I've always loved, and I just think this is going to be even more so. We're going to really get to know the players more. And you know, with the fact that the NBA has given the green light for them to, you know, to really speak out about, you know, activism and social justice issues. And that's great. You know, it's just great. It's just a forum for so much humanity. And I can't wait. And I'm so excited about it. I'm sad about Avery Bradley. Totally understand. But when the Lakers were just really rocking, you know, that weekend before it ended, where they beat the Clippers in Milwaukee that weekend, and he was, you know, really, really playing well, like his perimeter defense. He's hitting his J, and now, you know, J.R. Smith's a wild card. You know, I mean, I don't know. What's going to happen with that? He's not a point guard either. So
come on now,
that's a very overarching statement, right there.
That could mean anything. But
I mean, for that matter, so is Dion.
Yeah. Is Dion a small forward or a shooting guard?
Shooting guard.
He's like a 2-3.
Yeah, but you.
I mean, he can handle the ball some.
Right. You talk about it's funny, like. You mentioned before, like how you forget things and things seem like they were so long ago and all this other stuff. Yeah. When I was I wrote something for The Athletic, you know, a few weeks ago, and I was texting Andy and I was texting Bill Oram and some other people about like, hey, what are some things? Let's just make a list of everything that's the Lakers have gone through this year, like all the big things that have happened and all this stuff. I completely forgot that Dion Waiters was on the team. Like, I completely forgot about it. Like, that's how much has gone on and how long it seems to have been since anything happened. Like, the Lakers signed Dion Waiters in 1978. That's what it seems like at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's crazy. But it's funny because it's one of the things that I kind of remember the minutia of pretty well is Lakers basketball, because I just pay so much attention to it. Like anything else, I'd forget. But I remember that there was, it was between Dion Waiters and J.R. Smith, and they signed Dion Waiters, and he had been waived, right? From the Heat. The Heat had waived him.
Well, he got traded by Miami, I want to say, to Memphis?
Memphis. Everyone gets traded and released by Memphis. I thought it was Oklahoma City, but I could be wrong.
It might be. Well, he's been on Oklahoma City before, but either way, they waived him, and he became a free agent, and the Lakers signed him. That's when they let Boogie go.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping that Boogie would be healthy and come back, and who knows what's going to happen with that. That's I don't know. I always get kind of a melancholy feeling when I talk about Boogie, because it just seems like the guy can't catch a break, and maybe he's not giving himself enough breaks too. I don't know, but he's such a player.
This setup would be really hard for him. I mean, like this compressed, having not played for so long, I'm not 100. Brian and I have had this debate before. I'm not 100% convinced he's going to get another contract, but I'm definitely convinced that if he got hurt again, he's likely done.
He wouldn't get it. Absolutely.
And this setup, I think has more of a potential for injury than just a typical setting. So because it's so compressed and these guys have been off for so long, and they've really had a lot of them have had very little opportunity for conditioning and things like that. And you're going to have to some degree really play your way into shape, but you're not playing your way into shape to do the preseason. You're playing your way into shape for some really intense basketball. Yeah. And for someone like Boogie, who's had these really severe lower extremity injuries, that could be pretty risky. I mean, especially we don't know 100%, where he is right now physically.
Yeah, but it's not both ways. Like, I mean, not for Boogie. For Boogie in particular, I totally get it, and he should go through a preseason and a real slow introduction back to the game and stuff. I mean, the Achilles and the knee back to back. Is Achilles and ACL, right? Like the two worst injuries.
Yeah. He did the ACL, and he had a quad tendon that he tore, and he also had an Achilles. So he's done all.
It's intense. But I feel like it's like always at the end of the season, so many players get injured from the wear and tear in their body. Like, it's such an intense season, and by playoffs, it's always a marvel to me that they're still going. You know what I mean? Like, it's exhausting.
These guys, they're another species.
Time off, it's going to be good for them, and then being in the bubble in Orlando, there's going to be less distractions, right? So they'll be able to really just focus on hoops and not get themselves.
Okay, you're actually pretty well qualified, because one of the things I think that about this tournament that's going to be interesting. I want to ask you something that's related to Boogie that your perspective would be interesting on as well. But you've been in a situation where you kind of travel the world with the same people. Like you go here and that's where they are. You go there, that's where. There's a lot of concern that you get to the quarantine area, and because if you're really following the rules, you're really only supposed to be mostly around your own team for 3 months, whatever it is. How hard is that? Where you're always around, even if you like them. How hard is that?
Super hard. I want to throttle those guys. It's actually I've been on tour most of my adult life. I mean, I'm 57. I started touring when I was 19. And when it's working well, like when everyone's getting along and it's peace and love and you're excited about a new record, and it can be the greatest thing in the world when you can live inside this thing and everyone loves each other and there's a common goal, and you really feel like you're this band of gypsies going and playing music and uplifting the world and shining a light. Like, it's the greatest. But when you're not getting along, or you feeling like the guy next to you is a hypocrite for one reason or another, or whatever, it can be just hell and depressing and sad and lonesome, and you want to isolate, and you don't want to You know, you don't want to be around it, like if the one guy's there, I mean, you don't want to be around everyone because the one guy's there, whatever it is, you know. It's difficult, you know, but it kind of feels like this is like if they make it all, if the Lakers make it to the finals, right? It's what, 2.5 months, 3 months?
It's about 3 months.
I thought it was like 3.5.
By the time the finals would end, I think it'd be about 3.5. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's long, but it's not that long. You know what I mean? Like we go on tour for years. It's not that long, and it's going to be hard. It seems to me what's going to be weird is like, you know, if like a rivalry gets going and some good hatred gets going on the court, like they're going to be sitting there, the Lakers, in like one corner of the breakfast area, and it's like Patrick Beverley's going to be like 100 yards over on the other side,
with like Mickey in between.
Yeah. I mean, that could be really weird, right? Like they're going to have to like deal with each other.
There's nothing about this that won't be weird. I mean, like the whole setup is bizarre, and like you know, I mean, on one hand, like you were saying, you want the animosity to build up because, you know, playoff rivalries is part of what makes this fun. But it's like, on the other hand, I don't blame these guys if, you know, say you get down to like the last 8 teams, if they're sort of bonding a little bit, even from different teams, just because they've been in this really strange experience together where they've been completely separated off from the world. And you actually raised something interesting when you were talking about, you know, guys getting sick of each other, or, you know, like especially in a band like you've been in, because, you know, like you guys, you know, you and Anthony have known each other since like high school. So like there's a lot that can build up. And I think the Lakers are sort of this perfect storm of they get along really well. I mean, like this group really loves to be around each other.
Yeah.
But they also haven't been together long enough for a lot to build up. So it's like sort of perfect. Like, you know, there's not enough history that things can really start bubbling over. Like they're in this like sort of perfect bonded period. Like if they were in year 3 of liking each other this much, even liking each other this much going into the bubble, that could get a little more hairy.
Yeah, totally. I think the potential for them getting even more unified, that seems much more likely than the other case happening. And that's going to make a big difference on other teams, you know. You know, if guys like really like kind of like deal with each other for professional reasons and don't respect one another, you know, it could really blow up in their faces in this situation.
Yeah, I mean,
and chemistry, like what's going to happen with like Kawhi Leonard and Paul George were just starting to kind of figure it out, right? Like they were just kind of finding how to do it, and no one's been able to practice together for. How long has it been? 3 months?
It's been longer. It's been longer than a typical off season. By the time the games start, they'll have been a regular off season. Actually, would be shorter than what they've gone through. It's amazing. It's the same season. It's still the same. Look at you. You're so excited. But like that's the thing. Is like we sit here. Like our job is to try to make predictions about what we think is going to happen. Which team is going to be good. Nobody knows. Like there is no template for something like this where you can say, well, back in, you know, 86 when there is nothing like this. I mean, the only thing I can say is I think, you know, some of the advantages that the Clippers had, they still have. You know, the Lakers could miss Avery Bradley if somebody else gets hurt. The only thing I can say that I know for sure is there isn't really anybody I'd rather lead a team into something like this than LeBron. Going into the playoffs with all of his experience, with, you know, where he is physically, you know, he was one of the only guys who had access to a court, kept himself in shape, all that stuff. This is the best year to have LeBron James leading your team into the weirdest playoffs of all time, I think.
Yeah, and he'd been leading the team so well throughout the regular season before the Corona year. That guy is just unbelievable. He's so smart and so strong, and he just seems like he has such a big heart. Like you see him, and I think that's like he's the conduit for the love on this team. Like you feel it. Like he just like everybody respects him, and he's a really good guy. You know, on top of it. Like time and time again. Like I mean, you know, he was always my enemy because he wasn't on the Lakers.
Exactly.
Kind of like, you know, then a decision thing happened, and it was real easy to like take pot shots at him and stuff. But from the Donald Sterling scenario on, and to starting his school, like everything he said around that, and every like kind of issue that's come up, it's been so like measured and thought out and deep and just kind of a beautiful guy.
Well, I mean, this is something I think you could relate to this. Just LeBron has been famous for a long time. I mean, he's been famous since he was 13, 14 years old and has been under this intense spotlight. And you've been famous for a long time. And like you said, you've been touring since you were 19. Like, you've been doing this since you were still, forming as an adult. Like, he's had few, if any, missteps.
Still, the worst thing people say about him is the decision.
The decision. Like, the execution.
Anyone could have done it.
Right. The execution of the decision, which I still think was a mess, and I still think it was a mistake to do it that way. But if literally, like, if that's the worst thing on your resume, like, if that's where, like, your character supposedly falls apart under the type of spotlight that he's been under and the type of scrutiny, that's amazing.
Yeah,
that's remarkable.
It's unbelievable. And let's not forget, too, like, I mean, for one thing, I've made a total ass of myself a million times, but he also, like, our kind of fame is like super underground for a long time, and it's this long, slow kind of thing, and it has bursts here and there. He got super wealthy at a very young age, like maybe like how do you and grew up without any money at all. Like just dealing with that alone takes like such presence of mind, and I guess like him being, when he did the decision, it was like he was starting to, like, with his friends, like his, Maverick and Rich Paul and these guys, like they had decided, okay, we're going to do this ourselves. We're going to create our own, like, company, which was also, really thinking outside of the box and really forward thinking and stuff. A misstep in doing that, it wasn't the right way to do it. But I mean, that in itself, I mean, ultimately, like, they did it, the Boys and Girls Club, and they did it to benefit.
Right, he still raised $2 million.
They did it to benefit children,
right. Let me ask you this. I don't mean this in a kiss-assy kind of way, but I was having this a conversation about LeBron with somebody a few days ago, and I feel like when you put everything together, when you put together his impact, sort of what looks like he, socially as an athlete, that really is at the forefront of the new wave of empowering other athletes. When you think about his impact on sports, when you think about him as a businessman, and all of these things that are either things that he did or things that he kind of represents, I honestly think you could teach college courses about him. Like, you could put together a course about him. Like, he's that interesting and that and that impactful. I don't think that's ridiculous. I was thinking about this the other day. I mean, would you guys agree with that?
Well, I don't. I mean, he's a fascinating study of a human being and like a great American success story in every kind of way. But I bet you, like, that he could, and I guess he kind of does do it. Like, they make documentaries, right? Like, Uninterrupted. But
that's Spring Hill too.
Like him as a public speaker, I don't know if that's his thing or something he would want to do. But when he retires from basketball, if he wanted to do that, like some kind of like Tony Robbins, walking on hot coals, kind of like instructional self-help, self-speaking, the guy could be the greatest. Jeez.
No, he's pretty impressive that way.
I don't mean to short circuit this conversation, but it just occurred to me that it almost looks as if from like here to here, as if I'm trying to do an impression of Flea's look. Like this is not wildly dissimilar. Like you've got a little shiny dome going, similar shaved glasses.
Yeah, well, my wife just bleached my gray hair to be white today.
Oh,
and I've got a tail.
There you go.
Very good.
Just like Brian.
Yes.
Brian
I actually had mine polished earlier. No point in dyeing it.
The way that LeBron has really figured out that he can do whatever he wants. And I think also there was, and it's something I've always wanted to talk with him about, but never really had the opportunity. He's hard to get sort of intimate access with. But just there came a period where I think he really recognized, at the end of the day, my legacy has to matter most to me. And like, I'm never going to satisfy everybody. And I'm a sucker if I keep trying. Because there was a period where I think he was trying, and I think it's natural because, he was younger and you're still trying to, live up to this greatness that I think, everybody expected from him, he expected from himself. But then I think, there came a point where I think he recognized, I'm not going to match Jordan in the consensus, most likely. I mean, he's starting to gain more ground than I think he may have thought then, where he's at right now. But, there's no point in stressing this. Like, you can treat Jordan as a goal, but at the end of the day, my legacy has to satisfy me before it satisfies anybody else. And I think he became liberated from there. And once I think you have that liberation, you have the confidence to go in all these different directions, particularly when you have the type of power that he has and the type of intelligence that LeBron has. You can do whatever you want. And you're seeing him literally do whatever he wants.
Yeah. And what's amazing about that is not only does he do whatever he wants and he speaks from his heart and he's creating his own world the way that he sees it to be best, and he's not trying to please everybody, but he also does it without being offensive to anybody. Like he never purposely, even people who he vehemently disagree with, he never goes out of his way to insult anybody. He's never he's not, as far as I can tell, I'm not a media person. He's not flippant and rude to people. No. And he says insightful, mature, smart things. Like he's just, I don't know. I love the guy. I love the guy.
I just think it's amazing too. You go back and think about what the expectations were for him when he came into the league, and he's actually exceeded them. Yeah. He was supposed to be one of the greatest players of all time, and he's actually done. But I can't be. First of all, I can't imagine anybody thinking I'd be that good enough at anything where people would even pay that kind of attention. But to have that load on you and actually hit the bar, to me it's fascinating.
Yeah, well, maybe it is fascinating, and maybe that's because he, from the get-go, maybe he was more liberated in that way than we thought. Maybe he was learning how to be, trying to be more political about pleasing people and stuff in what he said. But he never had to, everything that was said about him, he never had to okay, well, I have to do this to live up to that or that. He just was. Maybe he's always been in touch with the core light of who he is, and he's just been, all I have to do is be myself and let it shine. And he's always done it. And it's just what the truth is. You know what I mean? It's it's not, his greatness isn't born of some kind of arrogance or something. It's just his nature. It's just, his him.
So were you feeling pretty good? I mean, I remember before the season began, you were pretty optimistic. You were pretty excited about the group together. We actually,
of course, you were also about to get married, so you're probably optimistic about happy about everything.
No, but this was really funny. We brought up that you had sent out a tweet March 4th, 2019. Dear at Lakers, this is of course when the whole team was injured and they were going to miss the playoffs for the 6th straight year. Dear at Lakers, why do you do this to me? Do you realize there are fans out here who really care? This is 7 years of this bleep. Are you just going to get 1-year contracts in pursuit of a star? I don't give a bleep about a star. Build a team that loves and plays together. You got what you wanted. You really got it. I mean, squeaky wheel gets the grease, man.
Well, we got stars too,
Yeah.
But it seemed like there was a while there where they were trying to get, there was a few players they were trying to get, and I don't want to go dissing players, but where they were famous for their offensive prowess, but weren't necessarily great team players, nor they had success being great team players. And I don't think it's really hard. I mean, people used to argue that Kobe wasn't a great team player, but I think in a different kind of way he was.
There was a stretch of dudes like Brian Cook and Smush when he went to other teams. You can go through a lot of list of guys that were never as good as when they played with Kobe.
Yeah.
I mean, they weren't.
Yeah. He just had no patience for anybody not doing the right thing.
Right.
Not second. There was
but the idea that he didn't make people better was always it was a false narrative. He did make a lot of guys better.
Yeah, and well, he made everyone better. He just didn't do it in a way like Magic Johnson or Steve Nash or something. Someone who's passing it to everyone to get him in the spot. He didn't make them look beautiful. You know what I mean? That wasn't his point. His point was to like most efficiently get the ball through the basket, and he thought that most efficiently usually was him being the one shooting it. But you know, especially for the first 3 quarters of his career. But you know, what's I saw a little bit today. You know, I haven't really been looking at sports press for a long time because there's just been no basketball, or no anything. But I was looking recently, and I guess since they arrived in the bubble or whatever, and the Lakers or J.R. Smith was talking. Other Lakers were talking about doing it for Kobe and the spirit of Kobe, and talking about Kobe, and that was really beautiful to hear. Like. With everything going on, it was just like, you know, this guy just kind of evaporated into thin air with his beautiful little daughter. And it really made me feel good to hear them talking about that. I guess just because the spirit of who he was and the Laker organization, like it all of that was like, it was like the rest of the season kind of felt like a wake. You know, it's like, let's all get together and think about this guy every game, which was what it was like, you know? And so it's nice to feel that again. Like it's nice. It feels like honoring the guy for all he gave is a beautiful thing and a beautiful sentiment for a team. And you know, I don't know, makes me happy to hear.
Yeah, when you think about all the stuff the Lakers have gone, like, I don't know if they're going to win a title. I don't know, you know, I don't know any of these things. But if there were, one of the reasons I'm glad that basketball is coming back, and I really hope that they get to finish this in what is that like this Lakers team more than any team I've ever seen. When you go back through and you know you start with the controversy in China in the preseason, you go through all of these things, and then like this was a hard season before you get to the death of Kobe Bryant, and then you add that in. I can't think of a team like in the history of basketball that just deserved a chance to finish what they started more than this one. And like that's what gets me kind of excited. Like they just get to finish.
Yeah, no, it's awesome, and it's like you said, it's strange, it's surreal. We don't know what it's going to be like, but I think that, you know, I think all three of us, we all love basketball, right? Like we just love the game, and I think that most of the guys that play the game really love it too. And not always. Some guys are just like have the body for it, and it's a great chance to make some money. And I don't know that they love it. I think there's kind of two different kinds of players. Like I kind of separate players by that, but it's, you know, just my intuition of how they feel. I don't know them personally, but I feel like the Lakers are really blessed with a team right now with guys that really feel like they love the game. You know, Rondo, Caruso. You know, LeBron, AD, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. It just seems like Danny Green, like guys that really love the game, and I think that's probably another reason why they really get along well, why they have that chemistry, because they can kind of like sniff out those other guys that are like doing it for, you know, showing up when they have because they. Well,
I mean, look at this year with Dwight. I mean, just the redemption story that Dwight had, you know, not just with his career, but with this team in particular.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, Dwight was also like kind of like really maligned all around the league too. You know, he had a bad.
And he was like the least popular guy in the league. Yeah.
I had this experience with Dwight when he came back the year after he left the Lakers, and he came back with Houston, and everyone was just booing him like crazy. And I was sitting down on the court, and I was like, Dwight, you suck! And he turned around and looked at me, and he was like, thank you. Like he was real close, like kind of smiled, said thank you. And I felt like such an idiot. It was a real turning point in me because I was always a heckler. And I was like, oh, Jesus, he's a human being, isn't he? You know what I mean? He's not just like this, like, you know, mythological figure on a TV screen. He's an actual guy, and it hurts. He doesn't like it. You know what I mean? And he kind of turned it back on me in such a like a reverse psychology kind of way.
Well, Well, I mean, we were talking before. First of all, I want to make sure we mention, because we have not yet, the show is sponsored by vsliquor.com, the most convenient way to get your alcohol delivered to your door. Anything you want, one click on its way. And right now, if you type out sports with your first order, 15% off vsliquor.com. They'll just bring it right to you, Flea. If you're looking for some,
even when you're on vacation, they will find you and they will bring you your liquor.
Though I'm not going to make a promise for them that they go all the way to Arrowhead. I don't want to make a promise I can't deliver. But, you were saying, like, with recognizing these guys are human, LeBron went through that period when he joined Miami where he became the villain. And he really tried for a little bit to embrace the villain and, like, wear the black hat. And you could see he didn't like it. And it's very few people are Kobe. Like, Kobe managed to market being disliked and being seen as unlikable. Like,
literally,
he actually
marketed it.
Right. Like, he marketed himself as unlikable. And he was brilliant at it. And Kobe was, like, he was a next level brander. But that's not for most people. Most people, it's inherent. You want to be liked, and LeBron, it was very clear within that first year of Miami, like, he did not like that at all. Kevin Durant, I think, tried to lean into it a little bit. He doesn't like it. Like, most people aren't comfortable in that. Yeah.
And most people don't do their best work angry either.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, we're like when it's like a vengeful place, like they're all booing you and you're just like, you know what I mean? Like refraining from cursing, but you want to like yell at them, bad words because you're mad at them. And so you go take it on them, go dunk in their face, like, cause you're mad. But like a lot of times that can be kind of, make your focus more myopic and selfish because it's about your anger and not like this big thing. And very few players that I've seen really play well angry.
Did that ever happen, like, early in your career? Like, there's a famous story about how, I think it was like 78 or 80, Prince opened for the Stones and got booed off stage. Like, I mean, they were vicious towards him. I think, like, Mick started lecturing the crowd. But, like, early in your career, when you were establishing yourselves, like, opening for audiences that may not be as familiar, did you ever go through those experiences of getting booed and having to react to that during shows?
Yeah, but it never bothered us. I mean, we kind of had that punk rock attitude of the real F you kind of feeling, and might have even thrived on it a little bit. I remember the first time we ever left Los Angeles, and we had just started to become, popular in an underground Hollywood nightclub kind of way. And we got offered to go play in, where was it? Like Lake Tahoe, or I'm having a brain fart right now, but some like ski town, not Tahoe, it's not Lake Tahoe.
Big Bear?
No, not Big Bear. It'll come to me. Anyways, it was like 3
Arrowhead?
like 3 shows a night in some bar. And so we get there the first night, and we're going to do our first show of 3, and then, come back. And we're supposed to be there for like 2 months doing this, right? And it was like, we're going to make more money than we ever had and get put up in this, like, some, like, fancy cabin. And we go and play the first show, and they're just like, pull the plug. And they said, like, get your N-word music out of here.
Wow.
Those were the words told us.
Whoa.
And that was kind of like what? And we left.
Wow.
But that was the first time. But then besides that, we've been embraced and pretty loved. The hardest thing I think for me was never like people not liking us. Like, we opened up a few times. We actually opened up for the Stones, and it was a little weird. But like early on, we opened up when no one knew who we were. We opened up for this band Oingo Boingo, who were really popular in LA.
Yeah.
And we got booed off the stage. They booed us.
Wait, the Oingo Boingo crowd booed you off stage?
Yeah, well, that was like, we were not like K-Rock friendly yet at that time,
So was this like the serious hardcore sort of influence days? Because
yeah, it was just, it was like, it's just like really, there was no, Anthony was rapped on every song. It was all rapping.
Okay.
And it was all like crazy punk funk music and him rapping, and it was just weird to people.
Right.
You know, I thought it was weird. I'm sure some like people liked us, and the band Oingo Boingo liked us. They invited us to play. It was really kind of them. But I remember I don't know, like booed us off the stage, but it was definitely a weird welcome.
Okay, you tweeted. I think it was today. You tweeted like a thank you to Lee Morgan, the landmark jazz trumpeter, who is not the example I'm thinking of here, but there are a lot of guys, who free jazz, whatever it might be. Like I've sat and I've tried to listen to Mingus, and it's hard for me. I don't like. It's not accessible to me. When you're making music like that, like it sounds like what you're saying is like you knew what you were doing that night wasn't necessarily accessible or easily, for people. What's that balance? Like when you're making stuff, how much do you want to let people in? Sometimes is it worth it making it hard? How does that work?
I think it's probably different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
For me and for my band, it's always just been about doing what happens when we get together in a room and play, and what everyone's bringing to the table, and never really having an audience in mind at all, like what they're going to think. I think that like the nature of who we are is made us make music that's, just we're all four different guys, but has brought forth something that's connected with a lot of people. And it's been a vehicle for like a lot of like meaningful connection and heart touching. But from when it was like really like not popular at all to when it became wildly popular, there was never a change in how we were going to go about doing it. The music just changed and grew. And, we got like, I think in the beginning there was all this energy and aesthetic and idea about what we loved, but we hadn't yet really learned how to write a song that you could sing along with. Like that's an art form that we hadn't really mastered yet, or I don't know if you ever master it, but it hadn't really started to learn that kind of format and that construction and songwriting. And, and it really helped us when we got our guitar player, John Frusciante, when he joined our band in 89, I guess it was, 88 or 89. We started in 83. When he joined, he was already naturally a really good songwriter, and he kind of brought that sensibility into the band and helped us to grow a lot in that way.
It's interesting. I had planned to ask you about this if there was time, but just talking about evolving as musicians, separately together and songwriting, and doing a little bit of research today, I didn't know that you had played with Johnny Cash on some of his later work, the sessions that Rick Rubin had done, and I think Chad and John played on it with you as well.
The one I played it just on a couple of songs. And
it was Heart of Gold, I believe, was one of the covers.
Yeah, we did a version of Heart of Gold, and something else too. I can't remember.
And I mean, what I found interesting about it was just that it's a period of Johnny Cash's that I find really fascinating. This later part of his career when he was hooked up with Rick Rubin of all people, like this very different producer. And it was, this different time in his career where he was clearly very introspective and thinking a lot about just everything that had led to that point. And you could see just this evolution in him as a person, as a musician. And you guys as a band have been through a lot of different evolutions. Like if you look at the early work to where you are now, like it's a very windy through line. And it's interesting just to see the way you guys have evolved in a way that feels like it's been very comfortable. Like it hasn't felt like it's been forced.
Yeah, it's always been, for us, it's always been a very organic process, and we always just do our best, man. We're just always like wherever we're at, obviously you ride waves, and there's times when for whatever reason you're able to really focus in and get to the truth of the matter. And there's times when, it's not as easy to do it. And you go through weird phases of being a band, and like mostly like these like kind of spiritual things that you can't really understand or control. Like feeling like lately I've been super excited, like we're in the room playing and it just feels so good to me. But it shifts and changes, but it's never been forced. It never at any time did we sit down and say, okay, we've never even said like when we get together to write a record, like, okay, what are we going to do? We've never done that. We just get in the room and let it be happening. And like, we know like to just let it be a time capsule of where we are and what we're into and where we're at. You
Well, it's
know?
just yeah.
Is it hard
and-
to do that without comparing to, this period or that period when, oh, this was some of our best stuff, or like just to go back and look at your younger selves, or whatever it might be, and make those comparisons?
We never do it. We just don't do it. I mean, I guess maybe like in in retrospect, I can look back at certain records and think about how we were at that time, but never in the moment of any record that, like one we're getting ready to make now, or anyone that we've ever made, did we ever. I never compared. I was just so into what we were doing and trying to make it be the best that it could.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually why the Johnny Cash thing stuck out to me so much, because it was in the early '90s, because that's right before Johnny Cash passed. And it was in a period where you guys were developing a really different sound at a time where he was developing really late in his career, a very different sound. And that's why I thought it was so interesting that you were playing with him then.
Yeah. Well, Rick was producing him, and we've made most of our, all of our most popular records with Rick, and had a real good relationship with him. So I think that Rick, when he got involved with Johnny Cash, and Johnny Cash is a great songwriter, a most powerful singer. I mean, it blew me away. It's the sheer physical power of his voice in a room. It's just force.
I saw an interview with Rick where he said that you were actually a little intimidated.
I was totally intimidated. I mean, it was Johnny Cash. I was, and at that time, I'm better now. At that, I was like, oh, like, how do I fit into this, and what do I do? What's the right thing to play, and because I knew my world, you know what I mean. And Rick was inviting me into this other world, and I didn't. Now that's no problem for me. But then it was I was definitely intimidated. But I think, like, with Rick's relationship with Johnny Cash, like, Johnny Cash had all these, great hits throughout his career through the 50s, 60s, 70s, right? And I think he had kind of come to a time in his career where in the years before that, like, he had gotten, I don't know, I don't want to say corny or put him down or anything like that, but kind of like felt like he had to fit into, like, what's Nashville doing now, what's country music now doing, right. And it had really changed and become more pop or more rock, and he was trying to, like, do these things to kind of change, and Rick was like, just be yourself. Like, you don't need to do, like, let's just capture the rawness of who you are. Like, let's just get in a room and, like, you're a rebel, man. You've always been a rebel. Like, you are, you're a force of yourself. You don't need to try to, like, fit into anything else. People follow you. You don't do that. And I think he really empowered Johnny to make those great records towards the end of his life and his career. And it's awesome. And I know for, like, when Johnny passed away, that was devastating for Rick. Rick really, really loved him a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. We also wanted to, with music, and we only got about 8 minutes left before literally the show shuts down. I don't know if you've seen it before, Flea, because you're active on Twitter, and you definitely get active in music conversations. There's been, like, a long-running conversation on Twitter. It's going on for years about who the greatest American band would be, like, of all time, like, best American band. And
does this include? I mean, but does they mean rock bands or just
sort of broadly speaking, pop? Like, broadly speaking, popular music. You could include like R&B. You could include hip hop. You could include a group like Metallica. Obviously, Chili's. I mean, like, there's a lot of different groups. And one of the things that's interesting about it that Brian and I found so fascinating is it really reveals how much, like, American music is often solo driven, like solo act driven, like frontman driven, like James Brown, Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye,
Yeah, those
Prince,
are my big ones. Like
Jimmy on your arm. David Bowie.
Not Bowie. But, Tom Petty, Bruce Springsteen. All these guys are saying they have bands, but Bruce Springsteen.
Those bands are extensions of them,
right?
Or feel like it.
Yeah, I mean, for American bands, I mean, for me, growing up, Earth, Wind, and Fire was a really important.
They're on the list of consideration.
Yeah.
They're a heavy consideration.
But I really loved them, and they were always, like, for me, they've always been the thing that I aspired to. So I just remember, like, when I was in high school or junior high school, and they were just ruled the world, junior high school and high school. And And the thing that I really like took note of them as a kid was like, and I didn't even like pop music. I like jazz when I was a kid. I liked Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker. Like to me, it was all, like kind of silly. But one thing I knew with Earth, Wind and Fire, it was like all the white kids liked Led Zeppelin, the black kids liked P-Funk in my school. And I went to a very diverse school. It was very like, kind of like it was like very equal mix of like white, black, Latino, Asian, everybody. But like Earth, Wind and Fire, everybody loved them. The Mexicans loved them, the black kids loved them, the white kids loved them, the Asian kids loved them, the teachers loved them. Everybody loved them. Like they just like resonated with everybody. And I just thought that was really amazing. And I always that was always like, that's the one thing, like I never want to be like anybody. I mean, I have a tattoo of Jimi Hendrix on my arm. He was my hero, but like in terms of relating to the world, like that was always the thing I thought, like, I don't want to ever be pigeonholed into any category. Like I want to embrace everything. And, it was, and that was always like that for me, and always still is. Like, there's just two kinds of music: soulful music and, music that's made for the sake of money.
Yeah, Earth, Wind, and Fire is on. I think they're towards the top of the list. Like Brian and I went through
tops.
Okay, here are some of the bands that we had on there that we thought would at least bear consideration.
Okay,
Talking Heads,
okay,
Funkadelic Parliament, although they're sort of a weird thing, just because they're all sort of this extension of George Clinton.
Right.
But they're so they cover so much funk, rock.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Allman Brothers,
okay.
Grateful Dead,
okay.
Metallica,
okay.
Public Enemy, Run
okay.
DMC, Outkast, Aerosmith, Earth, Wind and Fire, Isleys, Temptations, Pearl Jam, Beach Boys, REM, Santana, Spinners, Eagles, Beasties, Chili's.
No Wu-Tang?
Were they around long enough?
I mean, they're still around.
But yeah, but they're sort of like they're such a sprawling thing. Like they're a hard thing to.
Yeah, I don't know. I just like I love Wu-Tang.
Oh, so do I. But group like GNR is hard to figure out because they were huge in a very short moment.
Right, the longevity question really.
Like the Velvet Underground didn't sell enough in the moment.
Like Guns N' Roses and Wu-Tang, they kind of
right. Like Nirvana would be like that. Huge in a short period.
I mean the Ramones.
They should have been on the list. They should have been on there.
Little band called Flying Monkey. My band
That
was my high school band. We won the Battle of the Bands twice, Flea. Not once, twice. We won the Battle of the Bands.
My band also, the Forks. We won a Battle of the Bands too.
You are talking to four-time winners.
We were not in the same band.
I was my first ever band that I was in. That wasn't. I mean, I was always in school orchestra and marching band and all of that. But my very first band was called Tight. And we auditioned for the high school prom, the Fairfax High School prom, but didn't make it.
Well, you were no flying monkey, that's for sure.
I played bongos and a trumpet, and I was the only white guy in the band.
That doesn't sound like prom music, bongos and trumpet.
It really might have been one of those things. It's not them, it's you. I don't know if that works for your typical prom.
Yeah, no, I haven't started playing bass yet. I can't believe they let me in. Yeah.
That's amazing. It's a little like Michael Jordan getting cut from the the varsity team as a sophomore or whatever that story is. Your high school wouldn't let you play at prom.
That prom band probably feels pretty good about the idea. Yeah, man, we kicked Flea's ass. Like Flea audition, we beat him out.
Yeah, no, little Michael Balsary was very unknown, but Patti Smith and the Patti Smith Group, that's another great band.
Oh yeah.
A great story once that at her high school prom, she went to high school prom, there were two rooms with two different bands playing. In one room, there was the band playing, she doesn't know who they were. I don't know maybe she knew who they were, I don't know. But there was just like some band that wasn't that good, but they were playing all like the covers that everybody loved. And the whole school was in there dancing to this band. And in the other room was a band playing that there was like three people in there, and it was the Isley Brothers with
Wow.
Jimi Hendrix on guitar.
Yes, yes. Hendrix was an early part of the Isleys, like a
That's
side
amazing.
Isley Brothers with JimiHendrix on guitar.
That is
And little
amazing.
high school Patty Smith walked in there and saw it, and she said Jimi Hendrix was the most handsome man she ever saw in her life.
Wow. That is a
That's
great
an
place
amazing
to
story.
stop, mostly because we have to. Thank you
We have 20
so
seconds.
much for doing
This
this.
was
and
awesome,
giving
man.
us the
Thank
time.
you.
We
Okay,
appreciate
cool, yeah.
it.
Yeah, thank you.
And
Always.
we'll be back Monday with Soap on Deb. Again, Flea, thank you, and have a great rest of your trip.
VSLiquor.com. Thank you, Flea.
I can't believe that we're